And welcome back to another episode of High Level Wisdom. On your way in the door, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. I appreciate it. Today I want to have a quick conversation about happiness and why some people believe it's a requirement, and I'm going to break down why that's false. Let's get into it. There was a point in time when happiness wasn't treated as a requirement. It was something that showed up occasionally, not something that people base their lives around. You go through what you had to go through. You endured what you had to endure. If something was in front of you, you took care of it. And if happiness appeared along the way, it was seen as a bonus. Somewhere down the line, that got flipped. Happiness stopped being an outcome and became a standard. And once it became a standard, everything else started getting judged against it. And this shift didn't happen loudly. It wasn't announced. It kind of went over a lot of people's heads, right? It slipped its way in through language and through the way people started describing their choices and their relationships and, things at work. If something felt heavy, it was labeled as unhealthy. If something required endurance, it was framed as misalignment. And if something required sacrifice, then if it wasn't an immediate payoff, it was questioned. And slowly tolerance for discomfort stopped being a virtue and became a flaw. You don't necessarily, it's not a standard that you are happy in a lot of the things that we find happiness in today. For example, when people say, oh, I'm not happy at my job, so I think I'm gonna leave, or I'm not happy with, that's a redundant way of thinking, because your job gives you a paycheck for the service that you're providing. Then you go home. Nowhere in that is happiness, But let's continue. What most people didn't realize was that they weren't becoming more emotionally intelligent. They were becoming less durable. They were learning how to avoid strain, not how to survive it. And having avoidance feels like wisdom right up until the moment you don't have a choice. See, happiness is appealing because it feels humane. It sounds like self-respect. It sounds like growth, other catchy buzzwords like that. But it carries an unspoken assumption that life should cooperate with your emotional preferences. And that assumption holds until pressure becomes unavoidable. And as pressure likes to do, it's always unavoidable because it busts pipes. You can't get around it. It's just going to build up, and then you're either going to fold or you're going to release it. Resilience doesn't promote relief, but it promises continuity. It doesn't tell you things will feel better. It tells you that you won't collapse because they don't. That difference seems subtle until you watch how people respond when their expectations break. Some people experience disappointment, others lose their identity. The gap between the two is being resilient. A person organized around happiness tends to interpret disruption personally. If something doesn't feel right, they assume something is wrong, either with the situation, the people involved, or even themselves. They start scanning for exits. They look for ways to restore emotional comfort as quickly as possible. That reflex shapes their decisions more than they realize. Resilience interrupts that reflex, not by making someone indifferent, by making them less negotiable. You stop rearranging yourself to escape discomfort, and you stop abandoning your position the moment tension shows up. But yet you develop the ability to remain internally coherent even when the situation around you is going to shit. What this really exposes is how much of modern behavior is driven by emotional dependency. Not dependency on people, but dependency on feeling regulated, on being happy. When regulation becomes the priority, behavior becomes reactive. Choices shrink. Risk tolerance starts to drop. And people start mistaking relief for progress. See, because happiness is a state and resilience is a structure. States fluctuate and structures hold. When someone builds their identity around a state, they become more fragile by design. When that state disappears, so does their sense of direction. This is why so many people feel lost during transitions. not because the transition is inherently destabilizing, but because their sense of self was anchored to emotional stability instead of internal capacity. When external conditions change, they don't know who they were without the feeling that they were getting as a reference point. Resilience gives you a reference point that doesn't disappear when things shift. It's not optimism, it's not confidence in the outcome, it's confidence in your ability to remain yourself under the pressure that you're going through. That kind of confidence doesn't announce itself. It just shows up as steadiness, consistency, but not certainty. There's a quiet cost of prioritizing happiness that rarely gets talked about. See, over time, people start filtering their lives to avoid strain and heartaches and hardships or whatever it might be. They avoid conversations that might create friction. They avoid responsibilities that might stretch them. Avoiding commitments that don't promise that immediate gratification. But see, in turn, you're avoiding the things that build your character, that make you resilient. And if you've built yourself to a certain point, these are like reinforcing characteristics. When you avoid them, eventually your world gets smaller. And you just tell yourself, you're protecting your peace and I don't like people, or I'm not really an outside person. And then you're a recluse and you're antisocial and you're socially awkward and things like that. Resilience does the opposite. It expands your world by increasing what you can tolerate without you losing yourself. You don't need the things to feel resolved before you act. You don't need reassurance before you commit to something. You don't need comfort to move forward. That freedom compounds with resilience. Another consequence of the happiness first mindset is delayed adulthood. Not in age, but in posture. People stay in a mode of emotional negotiation longer than they should. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel aligned. They wait for clarity to arrive before moving. See, if you ever notice somebody say age is just a number, because we got a lot of adults who are 30 or 40 years old, but mentally they have the mind of an 8, 10, 15-year-old. Resilient people move first and let clarity catch up. That's not the same for the happiness first mindset. So, this isn't recklessness. It's understanding how growth actually happens. Most clarity is retrospective, meaning you understand after you act, not before. Resilience allows you to tolerate that uncertainty without freezing, so they're starting to work hand in hand. And there's also a relational impact that doesn't get enough attention. When happiness is your priority, relationships become regulatory tools. People unconsciously use other people to stabilize their emotions. They look for their partners or their friends or certain environments that keep them feeling good. And a lot of the times, it's just a one-sided thing. You're taking from that. You're not really putting in because you don't have that energy. And when those people stop performing that function, the intention in that relationship starts to build quickly because you have nothing to offer. They don't have nothing to offer you. And now it's just weird. Resilience changes how you relate in those situations. You stop needing others to manage your internal state, and you start to engage from choice instead of dependency. That makes you harder to manipulate and easier to trust. You're not asking nobody for nothing, and you're not asking nobody to hold you together. What's uncomfortable about resilience is that it's built through exposure. You don't think your way into it, you live your way into it. You have to go through it to get to it. It's based off of your experiences. It's a part of having wisdom and discernment. You stay present through experiences that don't feel affirming in that nature. You carry responsibility without getting noticed or acknowledgement. You go through weird times or you go through hard times without actually finding an immediate solution. And over time, inside that builds you into a solid, harder individual in a healthy way. Caught up in this happiness culture. Happiness culture doesn't prepare people for this real life. prepares them to optimize comfort, not capacity. It lets you relax. It doesn't allow you to figure out how much you can hold, how much you can actually go through. So when life applies pressure, interpret it as cruelty instead of shit happens. They think it's, you know, they feel blindsided by experiences because they never went through nothing. But these experiences have always been a part of the human condition. We all go through it in different ways. It's inevitable. Resilient people aren't surprised by hardship. They don't make it look all cool, and they don't feel like it's actually something just solely happening to them, like they've been picked out of everybody in the world and it's just happening to them. They understand that difficulty, right? Adversity. It's not a sign for you to take it easy. It's kind of like a signal for you to go harder, if anything. Another layer people avoid acknowledging is the fact that happiness can create a sense of entitlement. You expect life to feel good, then when it doesn't, it feels like you've been done wrong on purpose. You feel like this is unjust. Like this is an injustice to me. Like why everybody else ain't going through this. You start asking why is this happening to me instead of figuring out how you're gonna respond to it. You're giving away your agency doing that. Resilience restores agency by removing the expectation that things should feel good before they get handled. You don't wait for your emotions to get on board. You put principles that you're standing on, obligations that you need to take care of, goals you're trying to reach. This is why when you look at certain people, resilient people, they often look calm when it's all type of adversity going on. In a situation where people would have been folded, this man over there kicked back with his feet up. That's because he built different. It's not because he's detached. It's because he's not detached. He's not negotiating with his identity to the moment. He's bigger than the moment. You ever heard that saying, what's a king to a giant? You don't need the moment to feel good. See, happiness can make life enjoyable, but that's only when the conditions are enough. Resilience makes life more easy to navigate, especially when life doesn't make those moments enjoyable. One is conditional, one is foundational. We'll have some ones who feel good all the time, and ones who don't disintegrate when life gets fucked up. Don't run and start crying. You don't need to cooperate, to see it through. Because they so purpose driven. They know where they're going. They so confident. They're so, they've been through so much. A lot of the time, when they pop off, they might sit there. It might be something, just say on Friday, it's a proverbial world is going to end. And it's on a Monday. They might not even move till Wednesday. Because the experiences of what they've been through and the resilience and the wisdom and everything has just got them on. Oh man, I don't even need to do that. While everybody else moved, as soon as they heard it, they got going, they moved. Man, I gotta get out here, I gotta do something. Resilient, man, just feet up chilling. Man, I get to it, man. It's gonna be, everything gonna be all right. And that's what you'll hear a lot of people that's, been through it, resilient. When you, a lot of the time, are panicking, man, what am I do? What am I do? And you call somebody, you ever heard them say, man, things gonna be all right. And you're like, man, how can you say that? Because they done been through it. And they know, like, man, it's not really nothing. It's not really nothing to break down over. Most breakdowns don't come from tragedy. They come from intolerance over time. Small discomforts that you avoided, that you kept avoiding for so long, and eventually it became a crisis that is unmanageable. Resilience prevents that by increasing earlier. Saying like, can't worry about things you can't control. It increases your range earlier before things compound. You're not gonna always be happy, bro. It is what it is. There's no aesthetic to this. There's no quote that captures it. You know, it's not a picture that you can look at on Instagram. It's not a trend. It just makes people functional when inspiration is no longer present. That's what resilience is. And when pressure starts to mount and there's no way around it, that function matters more than that happiness feeling. Because happiness fades, your resilience is gonna always stay. And by the time most people realize it, it's gonna be too late. Hopefully this can give you some game on. You know, it's not gonna always be happy. The job is not gonna always be happy. Now, should you chase happiness? Should you pursue happiness? Absolutely. I'm not saying stay in a situation that's not self-serving or one-sided and you just miserable all day. No, start taking steps toward it. But that's where resilience comes in, because you have to be wise enough to know that, okay, I'm not happy in this situation, but that's not what's going to drive me from the situation. I'm not going to let the emotion lead me out of this situation. If I'm leaving because of, you know, disrespect, lack of self-worth, or lack of my worth, or lack of appreciation, whatever it might be, set apart the two. Be indifferent to say, you know, the pattern of this and that, you know what, really this over here, so I'm going to take my time and balancing some of the decisions and calculating moves. So again, 9 times out of 10, it's not a clear decision. It was led by emotion. If this video helped you out anyway, man, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video. I appreciate it. It's your boy.